What does good look like? A needle and thread? An opportunity? A bottle of water? Can it be personal? Can one action inspire something bigger? Can good be as simple as an open door? Can it create a future leader? Transform a community? Can the right technology eliminate barriers to do more good? Can it offer relief? Can it help someone in need? To us, the answer is yes. Yes, yes. To us, good doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be small, easy, and it can change an entire day, a whole perspective, a life. Good might not take a lot, but it gives, and gives, and gives.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining our session today. My name is Ruben Singh. I'm with 1/10 Consulting, and our topic today is our nonprofit needs a CRM. Where do we begin? I know there's lots of sessions you can choose from today, so I thank you for taking the time with me to chat. Before we get too far ahead, I would like to encourage or invite you all to log into the chat and just share perhaps who you are, where you're from, what organization you're with. That would, if you'd like, that would be appreciated. And I also, if somebody doesn't mind, just dropping in the chat, letting me know that you can hear me okay. I just want to double check, and I'm going to go into this meta view for just a second. Forgive me, this is the only way I can look at the chat. So if someone could just confirm that they can hear me all right in the chat, that would be fantastic. Perfect. Thank you so much. And so I'll jump back over to our slides here. Again, my name is Ruben Singh. I know some of you mentioning where you're located. I am currently located. I used to say Washington, D.C., but because there are so many people from in the N10 community that are from the DMV here, I have to be more specific. So to be more specific and honest here, I'm in Maryland, just right outside of Baltimore. So really excited to be joining you all today. As I mentioned, I have one screen here, so I'm going to be going through some slides, but I do encourage you to, put in your comments, questions, thoughts, insights. Just drop that into the chat, and periodically, and definitely at the end, I am going to take a quick run through and give some remarks on some things that you have posted, as well as answer any questions that you have out there. So let me go into presentation mode here. A little bit about 1/10. We work exclusively with nonprofits of all sizes, supporting them with all their strategy and technology needs. In addition to being a Salesforce.org consulting partner, we're also an equality partner, which means that we're held accountable to some specific commitments to ensure diversity and inclusion. As for me, I've been in this space for over 20 years. I've worked specifically with nonprofits in their CRM area for about 15 years now. I received my diversity and inclusion certification last year as part of a pandemic project. And I also serve on Salesforce.org's partner advisory board on their equality subcommittee. Earlier this year, I had the privilege to join N10's board of directors. So I'm very excited to serve this community and excited to be with you all here today. To kick this topic off, I wanted to start with a poll. So for those of you who are familiar with Poll Everywhere, this is completely optional. If you're willing and able, feel free to join this poll. And I want to understand from your perspective, what makes CRM selection so hard? What makes it so difficult? Is there too many choices in the market, not enough choices? Is it more of an internal thing about getting your team to a consensus? You'll see all these same bullet points in the poll. But let's take a minute and head over. And in the earlier session today, this link wasn't working. So I've asked our moderator to actually put the working link in the chat. So I would just start with the link in the chat there, and I'll give you all a minute to access that. And whatever you think, it's an anonymous answer. What makes CRM selection so difficult? All right. And so I'm going to move over to our poll in a second. We can see our live answers. All right. Okay, I see everybody's already at it. Always nice when the technology works. So let me move over here. Okay, so let's see what we have. I'll give it a second for everyone to chime in. Hmm, interesting. So feel free to continue, and you can use, if you haven't chimed in yet, you can use another tab. You can use your mobile device to access this. But I see some great responses here. So I think the majority perspective here is too many choices in the market, which I understand that. The three that are kind of jumping out is too many choices in the market. So that's more of an external thing. Understanding integrations and compatibility with third-party tools, more of a technical component. And then the third is not knowing what features matter most to us, an internal component. So I think y'all really covered all your bases there. The external market, the technical challenges, as well as internally what matters most to us. You covered all the bases here. So this is great to see. With an honorable mention here for data. And we're going to talk more about that. So great. Thank you. Appreciate you all taking the time to enter your thoughts here in this survey. And we'll jump over to our presentation and talk about some of the specifics. Let me go back into slideshow mode. All right. Hold on one moment here. Okay. So as many of you have probably been through, you know that selecting a CRM system for your nonprofit, it can be very challenging. Obviously, it can be very overwhelming, scary. As you mentioned, there's so many different options in the market. And all you have to do is a simple Google search, and you'll see that so many implementations fail. For every success story that you might find, you'll find just as many, if not more, disaster stories. And it's a range of reasons, and I've seen it myself over my 20 plus years in this space. It's either product limitations, it's due to over customization, complex integrations, under scope data migrations, you name it. All these things cause CRM implementations to fail. But at least in my experience, I will tell you the majority of the failures that I've seen have actually little to do with the application or the technology. In fact, prior to starting my own practice with 1/10, I've worked on implementations. I've taken customers live on time, on budget. We're all celebrating on our go live date. Everybody's eating cake. And then, but I know, kind of heading off, going into my car in the parking lot, that something just feels a little uneasy, even though we checked all the boxes. And that uneasy feeling has to do with a few things. Perhaps the expectations of what the system is supposed to deliver may be misaligned. Or client testing was not really thorough, or maybe the executives never really fully bought into the project, or there was no real ongoing training plan, or we ran out of budget to do the change management. There's no real governance plan in place. So these are the types of things that often makes projects go off the rails, or really not realize the full success of what CRM can offer. Not the technology itself, but everything that's surrounding it. So we will touch on those points in addition to the actual technology piece in today's conversation. Now, when you're introducing CRM to your nonprofit, sometimes it's hard to know where to start, what questions to ask. Most of the nonprofits I work with, they don't have extensive IT teams. So the person in charge of, selecting and introducing CRM, they might be an operations manager, they might be a program staff member without a ton of technology experience. So this session is for you as well. As you embark on your CRM selection or implementation, these are the things you'll want to consider. And you'll see that I will kind of interchange selection and implementation throughout the conversation, because to me, the principles are very much the same and they apply to both. If you do a good job at selecting the tool for you, you'll very likely do a good job at implementing it. It's a lot of the same principles. So here are some thoughts. Here are some thoughts on what you can do when you're ready to begin your nonprofit CRM journey. Okay, so the first thing is assembling your internal CRM team, and this is critical. And oftentimes I used to say, okay, make sure you have your subject matter experts there. Your donation processing team, your major givings team, your your grant management team, and make sure you have them all there to speak to their processes. Make sure you also have your IT team there, and your power users. And I think all that is true. But as I've learned over time, what I think is equally important is making sure you have a diverse set of folks at the table. You are cognizant and conscious of who's at the table and who's not at the table. And in saying that, I would say that when I say diversity, I'm not really just talking about where folks sit on the org chart and their roles, but I'm also talking about their level of comfort. I'm talking about demographic diversity. I'm talking about race, ethnicity, gender identity, age, ability, you name it. Everybody brings something different to the table. Everybody brings a different experience, a different thought to the table. And it's essential that when you are designing, building a system for your nonprofit, that you bring a diverse set of folks at the table who will look at it from every angle, not just the people who are the most comfortable with technology, not just folks who might be a little bit younger or older. Like the more diverse the team is, the better. If the system is really designed to be for everyone, then there should be a good cross-section of folks available and participating as your core CRM team. So assembling that right team is absolutely critical to having a solution that really ends up being for everyone. Okay. And if, part of your solution is going to be external facing, we often encourage you invite, whether it's your program participants, your clients, anybody, your constituents, to please participate. Maybe some of your major donors participate in some of the process of designing elements of the system or testing some elements of the system. Because again, if it's for them, they should be able to be comfortable with it and give you feedback throughout the design process. I give the example a lot of, when my parents signed up to get a COVID vaccine, and, just a number of pages or web pages that were involved to go from one place to the next. There was a timer that was constantly going. You had no idea what questions were going to be asked for you by the time you got to page 7 or 8 of this website. And if you didn't enter everything in time, you lost everything. And, for my immigrant parents, where English was their second language, they had a really tough time with it. And then you read in the newspaper or you read on Twitter, oh my gosh, minority communities or people of color are not taking advantage of the vaccine. So it really is this sort of issue of, if you really want the folks to that you're targeting or your audience to be able to connect with the technology you put out there, you might as well get their advice on how it should be designed and built. So the more diversity you have in your team, the better. All right. The second thing, so this is more team structure. We'll talk a little bit about the technology itself and the scope of projects. And so this is obviously the reality check. If you're a project manager, you've seen this triple constraint all over the place. And this is about having realistic expectations heading into your selection process or actually your CRM implementation. You have to ask yourself, what's your budget? How much time do you have? And do you have the resources to maintain the system ongoing? All CRM systems are not created equal. If you are limited in time and budget, or if you have no one who can really maintain the system after it goes live, then you probably don't want to go with like a Razor's Edge or a Salesforce that might need a little bit more hand-holding maintenance and so on and so forth. I know my clients, they like to keep their budgets close to the vest sometimes. They don't want other partners out there to take advantage of it. But I encourage them to share their budgets, at least in a range. So they're not wasting their time chasing the wrong solutions. For example, I had a prospective client reach out to me and they said, okay, well, we want to go through a selection process, an RFP process, and see all the different tools out there. And then I said, okay, that's great. What's your budget for this? And when they told me, I said, wow, don't waste your time. For that budget, I can tell you exactly what your options are, and save your money for the actual implementation. So having realistic expectations and being at least somewhat transparent with your budget range can save a ton of time and energy. And this screenshot that I have up here, this is not a scientific study by any chance, but it's to give you a sense of, there are some tools that are out there that you can get up and running quickly, where some that might require more design, build, and maintenance over time. You also want to think about customizability. How much do you need to customize your system? So again, if your goal is to get up and running with a fundraising solution, basic sign-up forms, a simple email marketing tool, maybe a little bit of volunteer management, and that's really your 3 to 5 year plan, then there's certain tools that would be great for you on the left side of the spectrum, as well as many others. This is just a sampling here. But if you say, well, this is all great, but we're looking for more than just fundraising. We have some very specific program management deliverables. Let's say we're a we deliver meals to our clients who need them, and we want to track very specifics about our program outcomes. The number of trips we take, the number of drivers, the number of meals, the cost of supplies, the cost of food. You're not going to find these types of things in a typical fundraising donor management solution. So this is where you get on the customizability side. I really want not only to track these additional details, but I might want some workflows, some actions, some automation. That's where you might want to lean towards the right-hand side of this flow right here. But obviously with more customizable that it needs to be, the more resources you might need to maintain the system over time. So you'll want to think about, where do you sit on the spectrum of customizability? The other point is what matters to you the most. I know when I often ask my clients this, they say, well, everything does. And I totally get that. And what I have here on this screen is just a sampling of typical CRM features. There's obviously many more than this. You'll see a laundry list on most websites of common CRM systems that have some sort of variation of this. And, what I would say there is, if you ask a vendor, hey, do you have email marketing? They will say, yes, of course we do. But there are some products that have a lot of features and they focus on breadth, while other products have fewer features and they focus on depth. So you want to make sure that if you have very specific needs, like you're really, honed in on peer-to-peer, or volunteer management is 90% of what your organization does, or your donor base is so far and wide that you need a self-service portal that, where donors and program participants can communicate with each other, you'll kind of have to figure out, or let's say you offer grants, you redistribute grants. You'll want to make sure that regardless of what's listed there on a website, that you're prioritizing what matters to you the most. And you want to make sure that the areas that are at the top of your list, the systems that you're evaluating, are really go deep in those areas and not just really surface level functionality. So what matters to you most? Come up with that list internally, prioritize it, and make sure when you get into demos, which we'll talk about later, you're really focusing on those areas. And as you'll notice, I don't mention anything in here about contact management, activity management, donation management, payment processing, reporting. Those are all a given. Any sort of nonprofit CRM or donor management systems are going to have those features, and I wouldn't waste a whole lot of time, trying to dig too far into that. Really try to focus on the other areas that are a focus for you. The other thing is pricing models. You'll want to know that how does this particular CRM tool come up with their pricing structure? Is it by number of contacts? Is it by number of users? And those are probably the two most common models, I would say. You'll want to understand this. If you have a finite number of contacts and a lot of users, they want to look at certain systems. But if you have a lot of contacts and fewer users, you may want to consider others. Beyond this, pay close attention to extra costs for features. Some features you may think are included are in fact not. Or there's many apps that have included features, but they're super basic. So, what you might be getting as part of your monthly subscription fee is the standard web forms, and they look terrible and they're hard to customize. But if you want the advanced web forms, well, that's doable, but just know that there's an extra monthly cost for that. And then different models of support have different cost components as well. So you'll want to make sure you get all the information up front about the pricing models. Do they go by number of contacts and number of users? And then, which features are included and which features are extra. Now, a lot of this gets uncovered in the product demo. And for those of you who've been in my presentations before, I have a lot to say about this. I'll spare you the whole story with the image that I have here. You're welcome to take a look at the whole 1 hour presentation we have on this on our website. But the product demo, as you start evaluating different systems, I feel is often a missed opportunity. And the reason why it's a missed opportunity is because we walk into it like spectators. Okay, go ahead. Entertain me, show me your exciting bells and whistles, where I encourage my clients to really take control of the demo. Do your research ahead of time on what the core features are, where their strengths and flaws are, and you prepare the use cases and you tell the sales rep, this is what I want to see. Again, looking back to our top 5 features, those are the things that you want to see. Prepare your use cases, present that to the team ahead of time. Make sure you get very clarification on terms. Every organization I work with calls this something or a feature a little different. What you call a soft credit might be different than what the service provider calls a soft credit. So you want to make sure you're on the same page in terms of what terms mean. Watch processes end to end. When you're going through a demo and someone says, "Oh yeah, you can run a report on that. Just click, 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 and it'll work fine." No, you want to see it. You want to see the processes go end to end to make sure the end result is exactly what you expected. Don't get caught up in the word integration. Everybody says they integrate with everything. You're going to want to see it. What exactly an integration looks like. When I click this in this system, what exactly does it show up in this system? Because that, an integration can mean something as simple as a plug and play 20-minute implementation, or it could be 2 weeks of heavy development. So don't get caught up in the word integration, and make sure you see exactly how things are integrated. We've talked to some of these other points before. Know what's included versus what costs extra, what's been customized in the demo versus what's out of the box. Don't be afraid to request follow-up demos. It's always hard to see everything all at once. And make this more of a working session. So you don't need to let the salesperson just go, on their standard script. You want to make sure you're working with them to focus on the things that you want. And if they are a good if they're a good salesperson, good sales engineer, they would actually prefer it. So also understanding your business processes. The moment your partner comes in there and they say, okay, let's start our design sessions, let's start our discovery sessions, they're going to ask you, tell us your business processes. And if you kind of start from square one and say, oh, I'm not really sure what they are, that's fine. They will work through it with you, but you might find yourself spending weeks and a lot of money on just this before you even touch the technology. So it's always ideal if you have the resources available and the skill set available internally to at least begin the process of defining your business processes. So that could be as simple as, what are your major giving stages? What are the steps to process different types of gifts? So this is not technology. This is really your business process internally. How do you track and measure moves management interactions? And most importantly, what are your terms? I work with some organizations that are heavily program focused, but if I ask them questions about, what do you define as a program? What do you define as a service? How do you measure the delivery of your service? What are the units that you use? Everyone has an answer, and they're not always the same. And so if there's sort of ambiguity or assumptions in those answers, it makes it hard to build the technology around it. So take the time to put a lexicon together of common terms, of high-level business processes. So at least you have a starting point for when the clock starts ticking on an implementation. All right. A couple more. Know your data. Again, your implementer is going to ask you questions, about your existing systems, your existing spreadsheets, your existing CRM, your existing tools. Do you use households right now, or is everybody treated like an individual? How do you track soft credits? How do you track donor advised funds? Everything, really trying to understand how your data is structured now, so that when you move to a new system, you can catch some of those items and make sure they're designed to move into the right system correctly. How do you track grant payments? Is it one transaction? Is it 5 transactions if there's multiple payments involved? So knowing about how your data is structured is always ideal. That way you can answer those questions about how it should map to the new system. If that sort of thing is just discovered on its own during a data migration, it can really slow things down. And it's probably the things that slows projects down the most from a technical perspective. All right. I would say this, and this is something that's really come up a lot lately, is consider a discovery first phase approach. If you have a huge implementation that's a year long and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and somebody just gives you a quote, without really doing, reads your RFP and says, okay, it's going to be $1 million. I would be a little nervous. And so and the reason why I get nervous is because that typically means they haven't really spent a whole lot of time seeing what you have there. They've thrown out a number, and after discovery, they're going to have this scope checkpoint where they say, oh, now that we know more, it's actually going to be another $250,000. So I wouldn't I would really think twice about that approach, and really say that if this is a large enterprise-wide project, you might want to consider breaking it into 2 projects: a discovery project where they, the implementer gets in there, they really understand what they need to do, they understand the data, they have a plan, they have a roadmap, they put it all out, lay out a complete statement of work, and then pause there. And then once you have a clear idea what needs to be done and a clear budget, that's when you contract the rest of the project, and sometimes even at a fixed fee. So I think this discovery first phase approach is something that you might want to consider for these long, large enterprise-wide implementations. Last but not least, I want to make sure I leave some time for questions here. Is having a decision-making plan, and this seems like an obvious one, but I tell you, this is where I've seen projects really get delayed when the organization I'm working with doesn't really have a way to come up and make decisions. So whether it's consensus, whether it's subcommittees, whether you all debate, whether you take your recommendations up to leadership, whether you flip a coin, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you all have one way to come up with decisions. Those organizations that just have no process for this are the ones that struggle the most. And then there's some decisions that you can make in advance. How much do we want to adapt to the current to the out of the box technology versus customize? How much data do we want folks to have access to? Everything, or very limited? Do we want to migrate all our data? Do we want to start from scratch? Some of these decisions can actually be pre-made, so you don't have to find yourself remaking the same decision every time it comes up over the course of 6 months to a year. So having a decision-making plan and pre-making some decisions to make things easier, as your guideposts are definitely great approaches to take. I know I've made this all sound easy, but for many organizations, it's not. So I encourage you, if all this sounds daunting, if you don't necessarily have the IT or the subject matter experts to do all those steps that I mentioned, find yourself a trusted advisor, someone who can help you translate between the nonprofit world and the technology that's there, someone who really has their pulse on the CRM ecosystem, someone who understands best practices, so you don't have to start from scratch with all your decisions. And of course, someone who's aligned with your values and mission, and someone who can advocate for your interests and priorities as you work with maybe multiple vendors in an implementation. Where do you find such advisors? I'd say you're in the right place. Look around at the N10 conference, at the NTC, join the discussion groups, join some of the casual conversation sessions here. There's great people, and just the fact that they joined NTC or they're participating in this means they really care about the nonprofits they work with. So there's lots of opportunity to network and find that advisor that can help you with all the steps that I have laid out here. So I know that was a lot to cover. So I thank you, and I would like to. You're welcome. This is a topic that we feel very passionate about. So feel free to check us out on our socials and our website if you'd like to learn more, or blog post about this, videos that we have on these topics. Feel free to join us. But with that, I would like to just leave a few minutes open. I'm going to take a look here to see if there's any sort of questions or thoughts. How much time do you typically see being committed to demos? That's a good question. A tremendous amount of time can be eaten up with demos. And I've seen things go like 8 hours, full day type of demos. And I would, the answer, of course, as a consultant, I have to say this, it depends. It depends on how much time you have to do some pre-research. Because if you have time to do some pre-research, see some of the recorded demos that are out there of some common products, you would be able to eliminate some right off the bat. So my argument there for how much time is, it's not so much how much time, it's more so eliminating the ones that seeing everything doesn't necessarily help. You probably want to narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 systems that really hit. And then, of course, see if they're willing to give you the working session style of demo. If they're not interested in that, then they're probably not a good fit for you. And usually when you get to that point, and those who can really feel comfortable with the use cases, you probably have 2 legitimate vendors that you're working with, if not just one. So I think you can tell a lot about the vendor that you're working with just in these conversations before you even see their system. So I would say you want to go deep, you want to spend the time, but don't waste your time by a huge breadth of vendors and applications to look at. So I know I kind of danced around that, but it's hard to say number of hours really, because it's really more on the quality of those hours instead of the quantity. Let me take a look at some other questions and comments here. Is there a good resource that shows CRMs on a complexity axis? We have an overly customized way too powerful CRM that's just not serving us well. Yeah, this is by no means comprehensive, but one of the slides that I had earlier, and I won't be able to bring it back up, but feel free to take a look. The slides are posted. I have that sort of customizability flow there, and I would say in terms of just overall complexity, that slide should help you in some of the common tools that I see. But I also don't want to say complexity is a bad thing, because many organizations I work with need that complexity, or the complexity is not the problem. It's just that they've never been trained on it. So, that slide that I have in my deck there should give you a sense of complexity. But I would probably, ask some more questions if we had some more time. Is it really the complexity, or have you not really been fully trained on it? Which is a common problem. Is it that there could be potentially features that are not that you could be using that you could really benefit from if the right change management is in place. So yeah, so hopefully that slide helps you. But I would love to dig further on that complexity question. Let me just see if there's anything else I can quickly answer. Yeah, about the interface. That's a real thing. Moving to a new CRM. It's too late to convince me to adapt nature. Yeah, it's hard to say without knowing what the tool is, and that's probably a broader conversation. But it's never too late. It's never too late. The time, resources, and money that you lose in being with the wrong system, will definitely be more costly than switching to the new one. So I would definitely say keep your options open. I think always keep a pulse on what's available, and it's never too late to kind of look for a new tool, because a tool that's not being used, not being adopted, is actually causing more harm to your organization than help. So with that, and apologies for not being able to go too far into the questions here. Hopefully y'all have been able to have a little dialogue, it looks like. So with that, I want to thank you. Thank you again. Lots of choices you can make for these sessions, and I appreciate you taking time for this one. And I look forward to seeing you all perhaps in some of these other sessions here. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.